Live on WFLA Now. This is Run for Fun with running enthusiast Leigh Spann.
All right, let's go. Welcome back to the WFLA Now Stream Center for this week's episode of Run for Fun with Leigh Spann. If you're just joining us, this show attempts to show you how running can be fun. Why we named it that. It's all about your approach and your attitude. I'm your host, Leigh Spann. I'm a meteorologist here at WFLA in Tampa. But I've been running consistently now for about 12 years, and the more I do it, the more I find it fun. So my idea with this show is to help others find that joy too. Now, a reminder that we do have a virtual running group together. We are right now about 92 members strong in our Strava running group, and we're really starting to see a lot of conversations between them. Now, so if you don't know what this is Strava, S-T-R-V-A, is a free app that you can download on your phone, and then you would go to the clubs, you'd go to the groups and find WFLA Now or WFLA Run for Fun. You see it there, and then you can talk and give kudos to all the other 92 runners and walkers and see what they're doing, ask questions. Maria posts some great tips on there as well. And so last week, we decided to ask for this week's topic, and you guys submitted some great ones too. Now I'm going to, let's see. Hold on just one second. I am going to. Sorry, guys, I forgot my clicker to change these graphics. There we go. So 92 runners. So last week we asked for suggestions on topics and on Facebook, and one of our viewers, Mark Leibarger, says, what are some techniques to overcome the mental blocks, i.e., like I just can't get through that first mile? And believe me, we have all been through those mental blocks, or as I'm calling them, mental hurdles, since, sounds like something like track. So Coach Maria joining us now. And
hello.
You said that there's more mental hurdles that people face. I mean, it's during the run, it's between runs. There's mental hurdles that can get in our way all the time.
All the time. Mental game is very important in running.
Because your brain, we'll start a little bit with the during a run, your brain can be just screaming, stop, because it doesn't know your body is strong enough to go farther or that speed.
Typically, your brain will tell you that you're done, like when there's still 60% left in there. So it doesn't always tell us the truth, which, our brains tell us a lot of things that aren't the truth a lot of times. So we kind of have to just be aware of it. And I always believe in being kind to ourselves. So we need to be kind to ourselves and our brains. We'll talk about ways to do that today.
Yeah. So why we hit these mental hurdles, whether it's while you're running or after you've run for a while, and then it doesn't bring you the joy that it used to. And one of my favorites is to repeat the mantras. We have some great ones that we've heard over the years. And then as Maria just mentioned, to manage expectations, because
it's huge.
You can't, your brain may be telling you to stop because you're not at a point where you should be going that far. So you got to put in the work to build your body up, and then you can start tricking your mind.
Yeah. And if you're training correctly, you should have less mental hurdles. I think a lot of times people just don't know how to train properly. And my first clue is like they get on the start line and they don't know what they can run that day. Like they're like, oh, I'm doing a 5K today. I don't know what I can run. So if you don't know what you're capable of at the start line, it's hard to pace yourself. And so if you don't know how to pace yourself, then you're going to hit some mental hurdles. You're definitely going to hit them because you need to be able to pace yourself to not hit them.
Right. Because there's two different ways to think about it. There's the runs like in a race where you have to finish. You're trying to go at a certain speed. And so you have to keep telling yourself, I can keep going. But if you're in those training runs, maybe it just means you need to slow down or take a walk break. And that's okay. So that's what I'm saying. Manage those expectations. If you're not out there to win, then enjoy it. Slow down and manage yourself.
If you have to quit your workouts are too hard.
Yeah.
That's just the case. Like if you have to stop on an easy run, it's too hard. So there are a whole bunch of ways that we can avoid the mental part of it. And I want to avoid it because once you do hit those mental hurdles, your brain is like a Polaroid camera. So it takes a mental picture of when you're in trouble. And then anything that comes close to that again, your brain will tell you it sooner to prevent it from happening again. So we want to avoid that's why I'm so mean about hot races. I'm like, guys, don't set yourself up for failure by going out too fast. And then you have this mental hurdle that you can't jump over. And then your brain remembers it. And then anytime that you have any kind of thing go wrong in a race, your brain's going right back there to that bad place.
Well, I never thought about that. Your brain takes a mental picture. Now, I did ask on Facebook for tips that other people had, and they had some similar ones. I got a lot of really good options here. So, So Jim says, now he says he's basically only ever trying to compete with himself, which, so don't feel like, okay, well, someone else is running faster than me.
That's smart.
You only want to compete with yourself. We have Suzanne who says one of her mantras, which I really liked, is I tell myself that runners don't quit and quitters don't run.
That's true.
So it's, we'll talk more about these mantras, but it's something that connects to you that you can repeat in your brain. And so that's Suzanne's. Tracy has a good one too. Make it not about you. Also, she says when she's on the struggle bus and often driving the struggle bus, she dedicates each mile to someone who can't run. She says that her mom, struggles with Parkinson's, and so a friend going through chemo and things like that. So if you think about those and them and their memories, then it takes it away from you. Then the miles just kind of fly by. I told Tracy that was a really good one. Is dedicate each mile, especially in a race, to someone and think about them for those 10 to 15 minutes that you're running that
Absolutely.
mile. And Casey, this one I've heard Maria say, smile when you run. It can help you run more efficiently. Kipchoge, who's the world record holder right now, that's what he does. And studies have shown that when you smile during a workout, your perceived effort is far less. And so then than if you were to be frowning. And so again, this is why we run for fun. So thank you to everyone who gave us those suggestions, because it can be really tough when you're out there and your brain is literally screaming at you. Okay, let's stop. And like, how do I keep going? And dedicating it to a friend, even if it doesn't have to be someone who can't run, it can just be, let's think about that person for this mile.
I actually love the smile one the best, but that's mostly because there's a lot of science to back that up. Because relaxed running is fast running. So when you smile, your body is naturally more relaxed. So you're not going to be all stressed and you can actually trick your body into making it feel like it's not as hard.
I know I mentioned this quote earlier that I think it's attributed at least to Joan Rivers, that she said, if I ever see a runner or a jogger smiling, then I'll consider it. And
That's
so it's
so
like
funny.
If more of us would smile, maybe more of us would find it fun, because if anything, you're just tricking that brain.
Yeah.
You gotta fake it till you make it, because when I do find it fun and when I say hi to people, I meant to tell you this story. I was running on Bayshore, and a nice little couple and their dog, which of course dogs make me happy anyway. Yep. So I see them and I say hi, but I do it sort of in a sing-songy way because there's also a dog.
Yeah.
So I'm like, good morning. And then they're like, oh, good morning. And when she got where she was behind me, I guess she didn't think that I could hear her anymore. She was like, I wish I could smile in that while I ran that much. And I wanted to turn around and be like, well, I have a podcast that you can feel free to listen to, because I was like, yes, that's really what, that someone literally said, I wish I could smile and run that much. And it was like, you can.
I mean, if you're training correctly, you should smile a lot.
Yeah.
Like you should. It's not, I think the most difficult thing is that people don't know how to do it correctly. Right. I really do believe that. I can't tell you how many times people just, they tell me it's too hard. And I'm like, you're just not doing it right.
Well, let's talk about that. So how do they do it right so that their brain doesn't tell them to stop as often?
Well, remember last week we talked about the checklist? Mm-hmm. I always use the checklist because typically if we're having a mental block or we're having some kind of burnout or we're in a bad place mentally, it's because we haven't paid attention to our checklist.
Which is?
The checklist is like, are we eating enough? Are we sleeping enough? Are we taking the breaks we need when we need them?
Because last week's episode was about taking a break.
Sometimes we just don't take the long enough break. I mean, I've been running for 24 years and I've been burned out once. And the one time I was burned out was because I was training for Ironman, which is crazy. That was a lot of hours.
Yeah.
And I got hurt. I fell off the bike during the race at I think it was like mile 109. I was really close. I was really trying. All I could think about was getting off my bike and running because it was so hot and I just wanted to run. And I didn't pay attention and I hit a lip in the road and I cracked my helmet, dislocated my shoulder, but I was stubborn. And so when I got home, I was mad I couldn't finish the Ironman. And so I was like, I did all this training. I'm doing another Ironman in 2 months and I didn't let myself heal. I didn't take the break I needed. And by the time I got to Ironman, I wanted to drop kick my bike off a bridge. Like and it was because I didn't chill. I was like, you know what? You got hurt. Your body takes some time to recover, even though it was a little injury. And it was a mental setback. Like, hey, I was planning on doing this race. My expectations were here, and then I couldn't do it, and I didn't finish it. I could have waited another year. Like, why did I need to pick another race in a month?
But that's what people do.
Yes.
And so sometimes we can learn by coaches' mistakes.
All the time we learn by my mistakes. But a lot of times people go one race to the next race to the next because they're afraid of losing that mojo. They're afraid of losing when if you just took a week or two off, you maybe would be okay. The smaller breaks help the longer mental game. Yeah. Yeah.
And then as people are building, I want to go faster or I want to get slower.
Uh-huh.
Or I want to go longer distance. The way I always think about it is that if you're building a house, unfortunately, the top penthouse weighs the heaviest. I mean, it's going to be, that's where all your speed and all your long distances are.
Yeah.
So if you just build straight up, like, okay, I'm going to run this and I'm going to just keep building this.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually that top is going to be top heavy and any small thing is going to come around and knock that right over. So you spend a lot of time building that foundation, a lot of different floors and a lot of different wings. And all of that is the slow, aerobic type exercise and not the speed. Because so you have to spend a lot of time in these building those wings and those bottom floors so that top floor, which is the speed you want or the distance that you want, can
and that's
not
part
fall
of
over.
That's part of what you were talking about with the managing expectations.
Yes.
Like I tell people all the time, like I actually had a runner come to me and say, I want to qualify for Boston. I'm like, well, it's going to take 5 years.
5 years.
This person thought I was like a dream crusher. She's like, you're just a dream crusher. And I'm like, 5 years is what the aerobic capacity doesn't happen overnight. You need to manage your expectations so that your mental game is strong for 5 years, not just strong for 3 months. And then when you don't do it, you quit. Right? Mm-hmm. Like we don't want that. We want the long-term game. So we got to manage those expectations on everything, like the little stuff and the big stuff.
Yeah. And so even when people, are trying to get through that first mile and they're, you got to start somewhere, right? I mean, your body, your brain is saying, this hurts, stop. Maybe all you need to do is walk for a couple of blocks. Yeah. And then you can pick that right back up. As you build these lower levels, it's okay to say, I can go slower, I can walk, I can take a break, I can get some water, as long as you're continuing to get out there and build those lower levels.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not, we need to just be careful what we do every day on the little things. That's all. Yeah. And then the big things will come.
Yeah, because what Mark Leibarger, who asked for this, literally said, like, when I think I can't get through this first mile. And first of all, the first mile is such a liar.
Yeah, it's a jerk mile. We don't like the first mile, but
because your body's still getting all less cranky from the night, or it's the first mile is always the toughest.
And there's also ways that you can change your mental outlook on the first mile. Like if you're struggling with miles, I had a runner come to me a couple weeks ago and said, "Hey, coach, I'm having a hard time. Do you mind switching all of my runs to minutes?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, like totally." Sometimes 10 minutes seems less daunting than a mile.
Yeah.
So I say, I'm going to run 10 minutes today. And then you don't have to worry about pace. You don't have to worry about, and then just go out there and run 10 minutes. And sometimes just that little shift can change your mental outlook on it. Sometimes not wearing your watch. Like go out there and just say, I'm going to go out and I'm not going to care how far I go today. I'm just going to go out to this point and back this point. Or put your watch on, not distance, just time. Yeah. And I'm going to run 15 minutes out and 15 minutes back. Changing the time of day that you run can help if you're mentally like Vicky, when she was talking about on that she was having a hard time. She went to the nature preserve and walked around the nature preserve, changing your location.
Yeah. So what Maria's talking about is that's one of our Strava runners said, hey, I've been really struggling. And then she put a whole thing about how she was struggling and people were talking to her. And then she posted where she went to Weeden Island, which you don't get much more naturey than that. It's been featured in Runner's World as a rave run. Like it's beautiful. And she said that even started to change her mindset a little bit. So this is why any running group is so important. The community that we so we're trying
kudos to Vicki for saying, "Hey, I'm having trouble and I need help."
Yeah,
like a lot of people are too afraid to ask for that. Ask for help. Say, "Hey, I'm struggling, and do you have any ideas on what I can do?" Vicki did that, and so
several people commented and gave her some advice. So that's. Again, when you have a face-to-face group, you can sometimes do that while you're running. But this was, we wanted this Strava group just so we can make this, even if you don't have a group to run with, you have a group there. The community of runners is out there, and we want to make you feel good about yourself.
Yeah. A lot of times, it can just be something little like you didn't eat enough carbohydrates. Well, like if you're not eating enough carbohydrates to run, it makes running really not feel fun. Yeah, it doesn't feel fun. So. Or you could have had too much alcohol the night before and you're just having a bad run. Or there could be toxic positivity going on where you think every run should feel good.
Right.
Because every run shouldn't feel good. Remember we talked about the rule of thirds. Like a third of your run should feel meh, a third of your run should feel good, and a third of your run should feel really bad. So that's managing expectations. If you know it's going to feel bad. I read a book. It was about stress management. And it had nothing to do with running, but I was trying to manage some teenage stress. And she talked about the expectation of assuming that something will be stressful. Because our brains always assume worse than it's going to be. So then when you get out there, you're like, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And then you have less stress. So I tell a lot of my runners, like, if you go into a race saying, oh, this is going to feel awesome, I trained for this because it's going to feel awesome, then you're setting yourself up for failure. Because at any race, I don't care what distance you're doing, the second half of the race should feel kind of hard. It should feel hard or you're not racing hard enough, in my opinion. So if you anticipate that and tell your body, hey, this is going to really suck. This is going to suck, but I can do hard things. Then your body's prepared for it.
And so we talk about tricking our brains. That's a good way. Is because a lot of times your brain will trick you. And then, and so like, hey, let's use the fact that my brain can trick my body and say like, okay, brain, tell my body this is going to be the hardest thing I've ever done. And then when I go out there and do it, my body's like, this isn't the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. And actually, or if it is the hardest thing you've ever done, it's prepared. And so it's like, oh, I knew this was going to be hard. I can do this. I do this really weird thing in races where if something starts to hurt, and I have autoimmune, so I've had certain races that have been very difficult for me, and it's been a very huge hurdle in my life. I say, always thank my body for telling me. I say, thank you for telling me, but I'm not done yet. That's what I say. Thank you for telling me. I'm listening, but I'm not done yet. I have to finish. So that's my kind way of saying, I'm never going to tell my body to shut up.
Right.
I'm like, a lot of people say, shut up legs. I'm like, no, I love my legs and I appreciate them that they will take me a far distance. So I'm going to be kind to them and say, thank you. Thank you for telling me that you hurt, but you can still go further.
So maybe treat ourselves like we would want other people to treat themselves
shocking,
or us.
right?
Yeah, it's like, okay. But and that goes back to those mantras because, we talked about managing expectations. Those are for the runs that, everyday runs where, okay, I don't have to go my top speed every day. In fact, I shouldn't. So if your brain is telling you to stop, it's okay. In those little training miles, just slow down, take a walk. But in the races, which is what you're talking about, when you don't want to slow down and take a walk, then you have to find something that you grab onto. Suzanne, who said, in her brain, she keeps saying, runners don't quit and quitters don't run. Because if you're out there and there's a finish line and you gotta get to it. What's our wonderful friend Wellesley? Oh, he's the king of mantras.
Yes, and he's the king of positivity too.
He is the king of positivity.
Yeah, and he is actually somebody that actually he works better in the positivity frame. Most people don't. I think we have to be careful about telling people what way they should handle things.
Right.
There are lots of different ways we can handle it. And, just because a book says that you should handle it that way, Wilsey's a classic example that he can't, if he thinks it's going to be stressful, that's a very bad thing for Wilsey. So for him, he does well with the positivity.
Yeah.
Like he says things that track like, oh, this is just a recovery workout. And I'm like, and I had tried not to get offended because I'm like, wait, this is a hard workout. I just wrote you a hard workout. But he's like, oh, it's mostly recovery. But that's his way of like,
he's tricking his brain.
He's tricking his brain. And
Right.
and you know what? Since he's done that and he's been meditating, his whole workout situation is way better than it ever was. Like I think he's in the best mental shape of his life, and it's because he did the work on his mental game.
And he found out what worked for him. And so, for Tracy, it's thinking about other people for that mile. So these are just suggestions that we can give you that when you're in that mile, whatever, if it's the first one or the 30th one, whatever you're running, whatever time when your brain starts yelling at you, there are ways, during those training runs, you can think of what works for me, because sort of in my head, I'm always just like, actually, most of the time I say something to the effect of like, you can do this. You can do this. There are some times, I haven't never told you this, where I go, Coach thinks you can do this.
Yeah, well, that's all right.
Because she gave me the plan. This is what Coach thought I could do. So I'm going to do it, even though it hurts, or even though I feel like it's going to, my brain is yelling at me. I'm like, Coach said that we can do this. And so sometimes it was like putting off on, she did it. She did this.
And the funnest part about my job is believing in you guys until you believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Like that's what my job is. Because we don't always believe in ourselves and we don't always think we can do it. But I've seen a lot of people do really incredible things that they never thought were possible. So that's a fun part.
Even if it takes 5 years.
Yes, even if it takes 10 years. I mean, I've had runners that spent 20 years trying to qualify for Boston. And gosh, it means a lot to them when they do it. It's really incredible. Like just the health issues and things that come up and the seasons that come up, and you have to be able to be flexible in order to, it's not always the training. It's not always the training. It's the outside life things.
Yeah.
So
the Tia
just
qualified for Boston. A
I
friend of
did
ours
see
just
that,
qualified
Tia,
for Boston, and she.
I loved her write up. It was a great write up.
Oh, and tears. I was crying while I was reading it. But
congratulations, Tia, by the way.
Congratulations, Tia, because she's in her 50s.
Yeah,
and she's been running. I mean, I feel like consistently for decades. And so it took her that long before she said, this is my goal. And she spent time doing it. And so even someone who's been running consistently for that long.
And she took some time off away from trying to qualify. Like she took some time away and then came back to it. That's always a good thing mentally too. If you swap your goal out, say, hey, like I'm just going to put this goal on hold. I'm doing that now with my autoimmune. My body doesn't want to do what I want it to do right now. So I just put it on hold. Like I'm just going to run recreationally until my body is ready to do what it needs to do. And we don't always have control over that. Yeah. We have control over our attitude about it. And I think that's where a lot of people are missing it. Like instead of that mindset of, oh, poor me, I'm the victim. I can't do this the way I want to. I don't get to go to London. I think, well, I'm not supposed to be at London this year. Maybe it's next year. Maybe it's the following year. But I'm supposed to do other things now. And then that keeps me happy, right? Yeah. I'm not like feeling like I'm missing out on everything.
Right. And I think that you're setting a very good example for people because so many people, first of all, stop. We always say running is just such a metaphor for life. So when we say like this happens to a runner, just basically just say person in life because it happens to people where they had a goal and something got in the way. Sickness, job, life, whatever it was. And you can either decide to pity yourself for not being able to hit that goal at this exact time, whether that's a race or whether that's a promotion or whatever it is. Running is just such an amazing metaphor for life. So by you telling people what was going on in your life, I feel like even a non-runner will be like, oh, that's, something similar happened to me, even though I'm not a runner.
And that's not to say that you shouldn't be sad.
Right.
Like I always say, be sad, but just put a time limit on it. I always say 24 hours. Even if you have a bad race, you have 24 hours to feel sorry for yourself, and then we're moving on. We can't wallow in it. We're not wallowing in things. That's not happening.
Yeah, because that's not fun.
It's not fun, and it's unproductive.
Right.
Like I'm not into things that are unproductive. Let's just be productive and let's feel the emotion and then move on, right?
And again, metaphor for life,
Yeah.
right? Metaphor for
Yeah.
life. So these mental hurdles that Mark Leibarger asked about. Think about what you would do in your non-running life. That what strategies have worked for you when you're trying to do something and you're not doing it as well as you originally wanted. Like, what did you need to do? Did you in school? Did you study more? Didn't get a good enough grade on a test? So you can put those strategies that you used in your non-running world into your running world, and that's whatever works for you. Mantras, a change in venue, a change in who you're dedicating to. Like if you're in school and making a good grade didn't matter to you, but it mattered to your parents, then maybe that was your inspiration.
And knowledge.
Yeah.
I think going out there and looking for knowledge. Now, that doesn't mean coming up with a story in your head like, oh, I fell apart because X happened.
Yeah.
It may or may not have been X, but once you tell yourself that story, it's always going to be X. Yeah. So be careful what you tell yourself in that regard. But knowledge is power. Like if you know that you haven't been eating as well, or you know that you've been under a lot of stress, and you know that you need to give yourself some grace, give yourself that grace. Don't just plow through. Like the plowing through is not going to help. It's not going to help the mental game.
Not going to help the mental game.
Yeah.
And it's not going to help the physical game, because eventually all those things there will be an injury. There will be,
and then you're really going to have to work on your mental game, whether you like it or not.
So
you'd rather work on it while you can still run.
while you can add some carbs to your diet, or add some extra vitamins, or take the time off or the week off so that you don't have to take the year off, or
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's if you're struggling again. Going back to Mark's original question, if you're struggling mentally, there's a couple of things that could be causing it, and there's a couple of ways to get over it. So it's different for every person. But if you're constantly, if you've always been able to run 3 miles, and all of a sudden you can't run those 3 miles, let's do some
something wrong.
Self-assessment as to why. And then if maybe it can be I'm getting older and I can't run as fast. Totally fine.
It could be, likely not, but typically it's only that if you were like an elite athlete as a child and you've like run perfectly your whole life, and you've like the elite athletes, they get older and slower. And I mean, if you had a great career and you hit all your PRs in your 20s, you are going to get slower at some point. But typically most of us are not even close to our ceiling yet.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear in my 40s.
Not you. You are not close to your ceiling yet.
Sometimes it feels that way, but Coach tells me I can run this fast.
It just takes time and it takes patience. And I think when you're first starting, it's like all exciting and new, and you improve. You could run incorrectly every day and still improve when you're first a runner. Right. And then in order to improve, you have to do things right. So there is a time period where then it becomes, how do I stay motivated? How do I keep my head in the game when I'm taking 3 seconds off of my race as opposed to 15 minutes? Because that's not normal. You don't just take 15 minutes off your times every year after year. I mean, you've got about 3 years of that. And then it's 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Or you could be like my client, Allison, who everybody looks up to Allison. Everybody's like, Allison's so fast. She runs a 3:11 marathon. Yes, Allison is fast. Allison also is one of my hardest workers, and she's one of my most patient, and she also has the best mental game of anybody. And she plateaued for like 6 years and couldn't break 3:30 in the marathon. And then all of a sudden, boom, now she's doing great. So like those mental games that you play with yourself to keep you going is what's going to get you in the long run better. Mm-hmm. Like you have to know they're coming, know the plateau is coming, and work through it.
And what would you say to the people who have just started and that 1 mile seems like forever?
If the 1 mile feels like forever, I would tell them to slow down.
Slow down.
Yeah,
exactly.
I would say slow down, pay attention to your heart rate, try to keep your heart rate under 150, and if that means walking, walk a little so you can go further. And then my new beginner runners, the thing that I think is the most exciting is all those PRs.
Yeah.
And quickly what happens is they're like, oh my gosh, I got a PR. And then they don't get a PR. And then like, oh, racing is not fun anymore. And I'm like, wait a second. Whoa. Like, what's your why? We all of us that are starting to exercise, whether it's walking, biking, running, we all have to have a why. Why are you doing this? It's not just for the race times. And if you're doing it just for the race times, that's the wrong reason. Like, it should bring so much joy to your life. It should be fun. It should bring you energy. It should, if we're always looking for the other things that it brings us as opposed to the race times, then we're going to stick to it longer.
And this comes up in just about all of our episodes. We're doing this for the long term. Nobody's getting, well, most of us are not getting paid for this. We're just
unless we find $1 on the road.
Yes, exactly. This should be a hobby that gives us joy other than, if no one ever gave us a medal for running, could you still do it for the rest of your life? And that would be the idea. That would be the idea. The reason that it's fun. Now you live a healthier lifestyle, whether you're out there walking, whether you're out there running, it's bringing you joy. And these are it literally comes up in every episode. We're doing this for the long run.
Yeah.
Literally for the long run of our life.
And I've made a couple of rules in my life that I follow. And it's mostly for myself to say, hey, 6 days a week, you have to be physically active in some sort of way, 6 days a week. So there's no getting out of that rule. Now, there are a lot of things I can do. So I can walk. Like, I am fine with walking. I'm fine with taking 2 hours and cleaning my house and calling that.
I was just about to say,
yes.
It's not always putting on running clothes.
No.
It's gardening. It's pulling weeds.
Absolutely. And like, when I make poor choices, like staying up to watch The Bachelor last night, and that was a very poor choice because I had to get up early.
Did it bring you joy?
It did bring me a lot of joy, actually. I was very happy at how it ended. But I thought to myself, I have to get up at 4. This is really a bad idea. I'm not going to run because I know I'm not going to get enough sleep, and I'm not going to hurt my body. Yeah. Sleep is important. I'm not going to hurt my body, but I will walk today. I'll go for a 20, 30-minute walk, and I'll call it good.
Yes. Give yourself grace.
Yes.
You did it.
Grace.
You do it if you're out there consistently.
It's not all or
it.
nothing.
Not all or nothing. Would you like to have a drill?
Oh,
do your
sure.
drill?
A drill. We're going to do our first coach's drill this week?
First coach's drill.
Oh, boy.
You got your whistle?
I do have my whistle.
All right. So this will become more of a thing, but coming forward, we'll have a little segment. Coach's 3-minute drill.
I don't have my timer on yet.
Yeah, but
so.
yes, and I will keep a little bit of a time on there. So
we'll
just
see.
go longer.
3 minutes seem like it might be long.
It is, but you can't go longer than 3 minutes. That's it. You got to do it.
Okay, so you're just gonna have to go if I go over.
Right, okay.
Probably I'll go over.
All right. So the idea is, Coach has a lot of very strong opinions about things, and we wanted to let her.
I've been known to have strong opinions.
Let her tell you some of her opinions. So I'm going to let her blow the whistle. I'll start the timer and go.
Ooh, that's fun, that whistle. So my coach's moment of the week is I want to talk about the fact that everybody says running is therapy. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I would argue that it's good for your mental health. There are a lot of things it adds. You have endorphins. I think we talked about it last week with depression. It's very important to get those endorphins out. But it's very dangerous for us to use that in place of real therapy, because therapy and mental health in this country is a very big deal. And if you are struggling, you need to find a professional to help. And if that means going to counseling and finding somebody to help, do that, and don't replace that with running. There's a ton of people that actually switch addictions. Mm-hmm. They come out of addictions and they go to running. And while it's seen as a much healthier addiction, it can cause a lot of damage. Running can cause a lot of damage. It can cause damage to families. It can cause damage to marriages. And so I want you to be careful of swapping one addiction for another addiction, because that's not healthy either. And the point of our show is to be healthy runners, right? Is that 3 minutes?
No, it was a minute and a half.
Only
So
a minute and a half. I got to work on my 3 minutes.
But that's great. I mean, and I think I've told you this before. That I read in a magazine where a lady, an actual therapist, would take people out on a hike or go running with them because it is easier to talk to someone when you're not having to stare them straight in the face. And so a walk or a run with the therapist, that's doing both. That's doing both things. But yes, while you do have a lot of endorphins and it does make you feel better.
And I think a lot of my kids' friends, they're like, why are you, they don't really get why our family is so close. And I'm like, our family is close because we run together. Mm-hmm. And when my children run with me, they word vomit. Yeah. They literally it's gone to the point where I'm like a little bit scared of what I'm going to hear when we're on a run. Because I'm like, oh, here it comes, here it comes. And that kind of talking about things is obviously very good. And that's why we've gotten the reputation of having it be therapy. But switching one addiction to another addiction is a very dangerous, and we want to do it for the long haul. And so you can overrun too. Yes, you can do that.
Well, if anything is taking you away from other things that you love.
That are important,
which,
yes.
I mean, again, alcohol, drugs, those things certainly take you away. But you think, oh, but I'm just, I'm running, I'm doing such good.
Running. It's good for me.
But if you're missing out on the things that also should make you happy, you need to think about that.
And I would also argue that if you're running a ton, think about what you're running from. Like if you're running so much and and you feel like, I mean, I've been there before, trust me, where I couldn't take a week off, and there's no way I can take a week off. I think if you can't take some time off, like voluntarily without being hurt, you do want to look at why you need it. Because with anything in life, we should be able to take a week off and it should not make us,
And if your family members are, there's always some, if they're not runners at all, that they're like, oh yeah. What are you doing? Why can't you be there? But if it becomes a problem where, it's an issue, then that's just like with any addiction. You just need to reevaluate.
Yeah. Well, I remember there was about 12 years ago, Luke said to me, he's like, we go to bed talking about your splits and we wake up talking about your splits. And I'm like, but they're so important. Yeah. And he was just trying to tell me in a nice way, like, there's more to life than your splits. Mm-hmm. There just is. Like, I need to come to that on my own. But I mean, if you're talking about running all the time and you can get addicted to running too, go to your therapist and find the balance.
Real therapist.
A real therapist. They're there for a reason, and we need more of it in this country.
And there's nothing wrong with it. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Ask for help, right?
Ask for help.
Yes.
Even if it's on Strava, someone might help you push you in that direction into getting some real therapy. Well, I liked your drill. I look forward to hearing more of those in the future. Yeah. Next week, I want to just give everybody a heads up. We are bringing in Dr. Brian Fulham. So
yes, we have Dr. Fulham for 2 episodes.
The next 2 episodes, because inevitably on Facebook, there's a comment that says, I won't run because it hurts my knees, or I can't run because it hurts my feet, or I won't run because of this, or I used to run because of this. Mm-hmm. He is going to talk about lower leg issues and running.
Yes. And he's going to be available for questions. So think about all the questions you have this week.
And then we will be live on Facebook at 9:30 Tuesday morning with Brian. If you've ever had any questions about how running affects your legs, Brian's going to help out with that. Dr. Fulham.
And if you're not comfortable calling in for questions or putting them on Facebook or whatever we're going to do, send us a note ahead of time, and we'll definitely give him the question to look at. And he is excited to be here and excited to talk about this. So,
all right. So that will be next week. So we look forward to a week full of running for fun, and then we'll see you back on Tuesday.
Fun. Hope we were helpful today, guys.
Hopefully so. And thanks to Mark for putting in that suggestion.
Oh yeah, thank you, Mark.
All right, bye y'all.
Bye.